Chaviv, how has the Israeli media responded to this campaign?
Well, the Israeli media is a cynical place. So the fact that the Israeli media has not been very favorable doesn't necessarily mean it's a bad idea. I think it's a bad idea regardless of the Israeli media thinking it's a bad idea. You know, the Israeli media is not always as expert as it pretends in everything it pretends to be expert in. So I don't think it's been seen very favorably. But I want to get back to you know, the question of for example, the question of social media and really what David has done during Cast-Led in New York was exceptional. And I think it was very useful, and I think Israelis also, the foreign ministry and institutions, Jewish organizations, need to learn the lesson. When people, what I witnessed watching the Twitter discussions with the New York consulate was that when people complain about Israel to Israel, the complaint becomes much more serious, much more honest. It's no longer demonization, it's criticism. Because if people feel as though an Israeli diplomat of stature, or someone who's a serious Israeli person who can send a report back to the foreign minister, is listening to what they're saying, they say things that are more serious, and they think things that are more serious about Israelis. Israel has changed. It's changed a lot. It changes every few years. The government changes, and over generations, the ideologies change, and how people interact. If people understand that they can change Israel, they don't. That really changes. So the question of giving people access to Israel is a very important question on social media.
But Chaviv, to you, what is the right campaign then, you know, for Israel?
Well, so this is where social media and this campaign are missing the point. And this thing had to happen. I mean, what David did was excellent. I don't want to criticize it at all. But the question is the message itself. The message itself. It's the most disastrous thing about this campaign, this Must Be Reading campaign, is that it doesn't actually deal with the issues. You know, was it the New York consulate had arranged a Cosmo with Israeli soldiers in bikinis?
Maxim magazine.
Maxim, I'm sorry. Maxim ran a spread of Israeli soldiers in bikinis or something like that?
Not Israeli soldiers, Israeli models.
Israeli models in bikinis. Yeah. Let's say Israel has murdered Palestinian children. Let's say you are a very nice, sweet person living in some village in Italy or in Georgia or in Texas. Let's say you see that Israel killed these children, and then suddenly somebody tells you, oh, by the way, just so you understand, there's sexy women in Israel. Don't think that a country that was murdering children doesn't have sexy women. It's beside the point. And people are not that dumb. And they know it's beside the point. And Israel has to start speaking to the point. It has to start speaking about Hamas. It has to start speaking about violence and about aggression and about occupation and about settlements and about borders. And it has to start speaking about it loudly, clearly. It has to start having a consistent message. What does this government believe about the end game of negotiations? Why can't it say it? And when it does that, the media kind of falls into line. Until it does that, we're talking around the edges.
I think, Chaviv, that you are missing the point. Israel is dealing with the conflict. Israel is dealing with bringing our message out. And maybe our tragedy is that we are communicating our message only through the conflict. What I want people in the world to understand that it's not only a place of a conflict. Yes, the conflict is there. Yes, the conflict exists. But I would like to add more dimensions to the way Israel is perceived. And when people in Ohio think that Israelis or Israeli women are walking in the streets with burqas, I want to tell them, no, we are like you. We are exactly like the American or the British or the Italian society. People here, they look exactly the same. So therefore, the goal of all the branding process that Israel is passing through in the recent years is to add more dimensions to the conflict.
That's fine as long as the actual important piece is getting done. You know, it's the Israeli establishment, the government, doesn't know that media is an arena. It still doesn't know that there is a war going on of images and labels. It just doesn't understand it. And so what you're describing is the sum total of what's happening. Nobody is sitting...
Why do you think that the Israeli government doesn't understand it?
No minister of government can leak a state secret about Iran. Because the Israeli establishment thinks that Iran is a serious issue and it builds armies for that issue. And if a minister says something off message on Iran, that minister knows that his political career is over and everybody will end his political career instantly. Media is considered this sort of side point that can be led, that doesn't have to be run out of the prime minister's office. It doesn't have to be run, the defense minister doesn't have to worry about how he sounds because everybody's an expert in media. Everybody knows it's not a war, and it's not a fundamental. The Israelis focus. If you tell the Israelis that the Iranians are developing a nuclear bomb and we have to start torpedoing that, the Israelis will found a Mossad. The Israelis will found, a Shin Bet to face a threat. The Israelis will found an IDF to face a threat. They don't understand that there's a war going on. They don't understand that there is a threat. They don't understand that what's being run against us is a political camp. Us being the entire country is this immense political campaign of labeling and of creating a brand. And so they haven't given it the focus. A minister who goes off message on the Israeli government's media branding campaign should be fired. A minister who makes a mistake, but there should be even a media branding campaign. There isn't. You tell me what minister develops a response to Dubai. Now, I don't know if we did something in Dubai. Nobody tells me. And most of the ministers in government don't know if we did or did not do anything on Dubai. But there's still a media message. Why is Interpol so obsessed with putting out, Interpol is obsessed with catching the Dubai killers? Why? Who cares? Why does Interpol care? What's the strategic interest of the United States or of France or of Britain about catching the Dubai killers? This guy, everybody wanted him dead. Most of the Palestinians wanted this guy dead, right? The answer is the media. There's this immense media focus, obsession, concentration all over Europe. No prime minister in Europe can let himself ignore it politically, especially not going into a British election, etc. Now, Israel doesn't even understand that it has to be a player in that world, in that media world, and get its message out. So everything David Saranga did at the embassy, at the consulate, was crucial, was important. It's a vehicle to convey a message from Jerusalem that isn't being produced.
There is a certain component that I agree with Chaviv. The component of public diplomacy should be something that Israeli politicians should take into consideration. It's very important. Sometimes it's even crucial. Sometimes it's even an important component in Israel's ability to defend itself, especially when we are talking about the international arena. So this component is really important. At the same time, I don't think that the Israeli government is neglecting this field. I think that the Israeli government is doing something. Not enough, maybe. You might think that we should do it different or that the government should do it different. But still, since it's such a vast topic, it's so important that Israelis will be involved in that. And therefore, I believe that the initiative of the Ministry of Public Diplomacy is so important.
Fantastic. Well, thank you for joining us, guys. Two very different men with very different opinions. It's been a pleasure having you. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you.